Pursuit of Podcast, a purely guest-centric show focusing on people and organizations that advance positive change. Positivity can be anywhere, and in a time of vast discord, the pursuit of is finding those who champion its causes loudest. Join us as we sit and learn about the pursuits of local leaders in their community. Let's go.
Hello, good people, and welcome to the Pursuit of Podcast, where it's truly not us, it's you. I'm Ryan Buck, Artist Development, New Leonard Media. With me is the boss, Mark Wilson, President, New Leonard Media. How are you?
Ryan, I'm doing well. It's been a while.
It's been a little while.
Today I had
that is
Olympic
enough
champion.
of that. Our guest today is Nick Beadleston, Executive Director, Commonplace. How are you?
I'm here. It's winter.
Wow, those are
I don't know if you wanted this to be evergreen, but I just screwed that up.
Metaphysical statements. I'm here. That's a great way to say, to answer, how are you, rather. But to begin with, as we were talking prior to going, the name, Commonplace, and in your location, commonplace, grounds, there's some similarities happening. So your identity, are you in an identity crisis at all times?
Yeah, I don't think it's so much of an identity crisis. It's, figuring out what role we play in a very interconnected community. There's so many folks doing amazing work across northern Michigan. There's also a lot of duplicity or duplicativeness.
Right.
There's a lot of something.
Well, when I think about what you do, I'll just tell you, just personally, I think it's cool. It's unique. It is community. It's something that's new, something that's needed. Those are just things that I'm just rolling off the tongue from one human to another. But what's the elevator pitch? When, socially, let's remember when we went to parties, you're at a party, I envision you in a tux, I see you in a tux, 1,000%. And somebody says, what do you do? And you don't have a ton of time. What's the elevator pitch?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to run Commonplace, which is now 2 community co-working locations. And so we are the work home away from home for some really fantastic community-focused organizations and small businesses.
Wow. That's great. And doesn't sound practiced. It sounds like, you've had to say it a few times, but it's really engaging. And you just talked about spaces. You're in some very unique spaces. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think all spaces are unique, and we don't spend enough time thinking about the physical spaces that we occupy and thinking about our agency in the physical spaces that we occupy. I think we occupy our spaces as much as they occupy us. So right now, we've got 2 locations. We're up on the 2nd floor of The Box, right there at 8th and Boardman, a building with some really interesting history, which I'm happy to talk more about. And then we just opened our 2nd location up on the 2nd floor of the Common Grounds Cooperative Building, which is just an incredibly exciting place to be. So many awesome humans.
Wow. And the first place, now that there's more than one, you have to think of 2 different things and 2 different elements. But talking about the first place, what was special about it? Why was it the place to be the first place?
Yeah, it's actually not our first location. We started up above Rare Bird, which, looking at the history of Rare Bird, is also a really fantastic place to be. What Tina and her team have created there is a phenomenal, really employee-focused, community-centric business. So it was great to start there. So we were up there in 2017. I was a tenant of the space at the time, and then moved over to The Box, I want to say around 2018, 2019. Mm-hmm. And that building started off, as its name would suggest, as a cigar box factory, serving one of 30 cigar companies in Traverse City. There used to be a ton of tobacco processing up here. Canadian tobacco.
That doesn't come up a lot.
No.
It hasn't come up a lot on this podcast, and we're with a lot of prolific Traverse City folk a lot. So what, in your opinion, does a space need at this point in your time with Commonplace? What does it need?
Yeah. And real quick, I will add that building has been a number of things. Probably the cigar box factory is the least interesting. For a number of years, it was a really progressive physical therapy studio, particularly serving those with special abilities and needs. And so
What time frame was that? Is that
that's a great question.
Yeah.
Jeff Haas, who's with Building Bridges for Music, was really instrumental in that physical therapy studio.
No pun intended.
And yeah, so they would, again, work with special needs and really get those people that they served out in the community across Michigan, participating in, races and other things, to normalize that, to take some of those physical activities out of the realm of, seasoned athletes and make them accessible to all kinds of folks, way before it was super cool to talk about accessibility.
Right. Well, that's an interesting point of view because it obviously led somewhere. And how significant is that to the culture of the organization? Because hearing you talk about it, there's knowledge, but there's some passion there.
So I totally circumvented your earlier question, but I think there is a strong through line, because what a physical space needs and what a physical space can be doesn't really stop at the boundaries of that physical space. I think having a finite space sort of gives you agency and authority to convene. Hey, we got a place, come to our place. But really what it can serve as is a home base for work that really reverberates past those walls, if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
And it's not easy.
Lord
knows we don't do it right all the time.
You didn't circumvent anything. I could be on this track and hearing you for the next 9 hours, because you talk about how a space feels, and it's important. And I don't think that's talked about enough, and probably not talked about enough at major corporations, decidedly, places where that stuff matters, probably more and more. But you still have to be a business and you have to operate. So what's kind of the down and dirty stuff? What are the things that a building or a space really needs for you to be successful?
Yeah, it's so dependent on the people that inhabit it. We are a 501c3, we are a nonprofit, but the majority of our revenue is earned revenue. So we function very much like a business. Mm-hmm. And co-working is a fascinating industry. I would posit that most people that are in the co-working industry don't understand the industry that they're in. Because if you look at a co-working space sort of conceptually, if you look at it on paper, it's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to buy a building or lease a space, and then I'll sublease it for more than I'm paying, and I'll make money.
Yeah.
Easy.
Right.
But I think folks tend to underestimate, the amount of time that goes into managing essentially a bunch of individual real estate contracts, and then how important and how much time it takes to really build a culture that makes that space attractive. I think what's in a physical space, somewhat ironically, matters less than what's happening in that space, than who's showing up and how they're showing up.
Right.
I think we've all traveled and been to really cool looking co-working spaces that were ghost towns, mm-hmm. because they built the thing. They didn't check to see if anybody in their community wanted it. They didn't figure out who that group of people was that was really going to initially inhabit the space and who they wanted that space to be for. They just built something shiny.
Well, you touched on something there. Oh, sorry.
I was going to ask it. So is it more, you're looking like it's niched down where there's synergy between the organizations that utilize that space?
Yeah.
Similar to in a business world with having referral partners, potential referral partners, subletting some of your spots so that like there's...
Yeah, referral partners, I think at a base, but that still tends to be very transactional, very sort of quid pro quo. What we're lucky enough to have in our spaces are organizations that are already working together or are really excited to be in an environment where they know they're going to wind up working together.
Right.
So I think about in our new location, we've got TLD, Taste of Local Difference, a fantastic local social enterprise right down the hall from Annaberry Farms, a great ethical animal husbandry farm. They're not collaborating together yet that I know of, but one of the reasons they want to be in that space is because they know they're going to have a chance to work together. And then Crosshatch is right down the hall from them. They're already teaming up. So there's a lot of pre-existing synergy and then a lot more synergy that we know is going to come. And also it doesn't just happen. I think that's the thing that a lot of co-working spaces fail to understand. If we just have a happy hour once a month, people are going to network and work together. It requires a little more.
Does the happy hour seem like it just invites all the thirsty people?
I mean, happy
that's
hours
no
are
pun
awesome.
intended either. But I mean, like people that are kind of hurting for business and need to,
Isn't that the point of networking, though? In the end, you do want people to be connected.
Yeah, and I do
people
not
as well,
want
but-
to discount the importance of getting people together around good drink and good food. I think that's such a critical kicking off point for really important work. But we've all been to networking events where, you get 5 cards and, at most you use them to level out a wobbly coffee table later.
no relationship truly built from it. What I meant is like when you can feel the difference when somebody has to make a sale and somebody's looking to do business, and wants to really build a relationship, and long term they're looking for that mutual benefit and they're a go-giver. And then you have somebody who shows up to events like that and is just trying to get as many cards and throw as many cards and doesn't really invest in you as a person, let alone your organization.
Yeah, that definitely happens. I will say that you'll see me all across town, but my event attendance decisions are heavily predicated on where the free food's going to be. I bring Tupperware, man. I'm prepared.
So print a menu ahead of time to get Nick. And can I ask you, Mark, what you said was really, I think, profound, but did you mean to say go-getter?
No.
Oh, did you mean to say go-giver? Because go-giver is brilliant.
I'm a fan of the book Go-Giver.
Okay.
And
I just wanted to call out to that because I didn't know.
It's basically as a business owner myself, who I've never worked in sales ever. I've worked in politics, which is kind of...
Oh, you've worked in sales, buddy.
Yes, that's what I mean. So I've recognized there's an element of sales to that, which is still, to me, sales was like a bad word. It just made me feel gross. And so I had to educate myself to like, well, of course there's good marketing, there's good ways of letting people know like, hey, I have a service that I think is of value to people and I'm here if you need me. And then there's the other like aggressive marketing where it's like, get out of my feed, get off my phone, get off my doorstep. Like I didn't ask for this. And so that's what I was getting at with the networking events. Like sometimes if that's all that your community is based off of that you're trying to build is like, we're going to have this networking event. It kind of seems like people are only there to speed date and not,
Yeah, now we're, post a time when we couldn't meet. So are we in a fervor? Are we in a early 1970s fueled, like we just can't wait to meet and we're meeting as frantically as we can? And how many meetings have you clocked today, person? And are you logging your meetings? Are we not that intense anymore?
Yeah, and I want to push back a little bit because I've heard a lot of this, the assertion, that we weren't able to meet during the pandemic. And granted, I'm sort of a textbook extrovert, but I talked to so many fantastic people around the world that I would not have taken the time to connect with during the pandemic because, well, shit, I couldn't go to Brew. I couldn't go to Mundo's.
Yeah.
And so I think it really expanded my thinking on what it means to connect. Face-to-face, three-dimensional face to three-dimensional face is always going to be the best way to form a deeper connection. But holy cow, we live in such an amazing, I keep saying the word amazing. We live in such a rich and vibrant world with so many people that are passionate and experts about what they do. And a couple of years ago, it must have been during Film Fest. I'm not a big fan of the guy, but I was listening to Michael Moore and he said, "You guys realize you're a peninsula on a fucking peninsula, right?" We can tend to be a little isolated.
Where is that t-shirt?
Yeah.
That's hot. And if amazing is what's in your heart, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think
it's lazy.
And
we can do better.
Well, speaking of extraordinary, you served for 5 years in the Army where the food quality was unexpectedly pleasant, and you got to jump out of airplanes, and you also achieved your bachelor's degree in communication and media studies. So just putting yourself in the headspace back then, what was the dream? What was the plan? And what was the reality that presented itself to you?
I think I watched too many action movies in the late 90s, early 2000s. I had
a kindred spirit. I knew it. I knew it. Yes.
I had a very specific idea of, what I was getting into. I think it's it's borderline criminal that we let military recruiters into high school because, man, we're just so stupid. Well, I'm projecting. I was so stupid at that age. Yeah, I'm sure for me, a lot of it was escapism at the time. You know, I'm getting out of the town, the family, the immediate surroundings that I was raised in, and I'm gonna go around the world and meet interesting people and shoot them.
Yeah, the old saying. Yeah, it's interesting how that's been commoditized. Even that phrase.
Yeah, it sticks for a reason. I was a really lousy soldier. I was just not cut out for it.
Is that something you're saying now, or did you think that at the time?
I mean,
or were you told that at the time?
Yeah,
to use a cliche?
I'll show you the letters from commanding officers.
How so? Like,
at least one of them wrote in a counseling statement, if you were in any other military, we'd have shot you by now. Which is
That's not still legal.
pretty
is it?
fantastic. I wish I had that framed.
what do you...
That's a good motivator.
I mean, to go in this
Right there.
direction, I'm just really curious, like, not a good soldier as in your workout ethic wasn't there, or you didn't fall in line, or you challenged the authority. Or...
Yeah, I definitely constantly challenged authority. And people sometimes wear that as a badge of honor, but there's an effective and a tactful way to push back against authority. And then there's just stupid rebelliousness. Looking back now, there were so many people who could have been mentors who I think were trying to help.
Yeah.
But I was just too young and dumb and headstrong.
And thought you were going to win the argument.
Right. Which, how could that possibly?
Well, you had to have had a reasonable expectation of the role of authority in any branch of the military. So I
don't think I did.
You didn't?
I don't think that expectation was rooted in any kind of reality.
The JCVD movies in surplus that gave you maybe an expectation of maybe I'll be the guy who kind of bucks the trend and gets to be the rebel, be the Bill Murray in Stripes. And
yeah, I don't know what the fantasy was. And I should say I did 2 deployments. I worked very hard while I was in the military, but I still spent a lot of time thinking about, man, if I'd have made some different choices, could I have gotten more out of those
years.
Those 5 years? Would I still be in?
Well, see, I was wondering if you're more like Luke Wilson with his, like, you always said lead, follower, get out of the way. So I got out of the way. Like,
idiocracy reference.
Yeah.
Well, and
Great
again,
documentary.
that's what I was trying to, another kindred spirit moment, but that's what I was trying to get to is, you were clearly doing some significant things there. You had some significant learning. So this is kind of the dream we talked about that was clearly shattered. So then what was the plan? And then what was the reality that presented itself?
Yeah, and part of some of the self-depreciating nature of that comment, I don't know if this fully comes across. I have great respect and reverence for those people that have the kind of fortitude and discipline to be career soldiers. Again, not a path that would work for me, but just hugely impressed by what people can do and what they have done for causes that they believe in. It was really interesting to be on the ground in places that you normally only hear about, read about, and to talk to civilians and to learn about what they were living through and what their experience was. And it really shook a lot of my core beliefs. I grew up in a blue-collar Midwestern family, and the people that I were interacting with were the other. I'd only seen them again in movies. The other.
And was that a concept that was known to you at the time, or did you affirm that at another period?
No. I mean, there was certainly some lightning bolt revelations, particularly on my first deployment in Afghanistan, when I was just out talking to people and realizing, oh my God, I know somebody exactly like you back home. I know somebody exactly like you back home. Oh, it sounds super kumbaya, but the personal revelation, because I think everyone has to experience this firsthand. Oh, holy shit, we're all pretty much the same. We want the same things. There are really exciting, unique cultural differences that should be celebrated, but when you boil it all down, people want to be left the hell alone. They want their kids to have a better life than they had. They want to pursue their work, their art, their craft.
No, that's not too kumbaya at all. We put people are people over this segment if we could afford it. the rights, that's going to be a little bit out of our reach. So what brought you to Traverse City?
Yeah. So when I got out of the military, I really wasn't sure how the skills I had learned translated to the civilian world at all. I was a scout. And so, unlike being a helicopter mechanic, it's really not clear how you go about doing that in a very different kind of peaceful civilian environment. So I bounced around for a little bit, spent some time in New York, which is an amazing city to visit. I couldn't imagine living there
New
long
York,
term.
how soon after, the last day of your time in the military, at least at that capacity, what is that like? I mean, I figured thanks a lot. It feels like there should be more, but I think that there's not.
Yeah, both I and the Army were agreed that, we would happily go see other people. Yeah, they weren't sad to see me go. I was not sad to leave. I have much more gratitude in retrospect than I did at the time. Yeah, incredible gratitude for the life-changing experiences, both the good and the bad. But yeah, leaving that, I mean, it's not just a job, it's very much an insular culture. Everyone's experience is different. Mine, I didn't feel like I was particularly prepared to, again, leave that really insular culture. And maybe other folks have a lot more support. But yeah, really just drifting mentally, drifting physically around the country.
Yeah. New York, big place to go. And prior to this pursuit, you had experience as a writer and working in media. So
that came after.
Oh, really?
But part of the process of figuring out how do I take these skills that I
prior
learned
to
as a
your
scout.
experience at Commonplace, by my
Oh
apologies.
yeah.
But so you clearly found your way into creativity. I mean, did you ever have Ted Turner-ish aspirations in a way? Did you think creativity could be a sustainable career enterprise?
I don't know what I'm going to have later for dinner, and that's about as far in advance as I generally plan.
Sounds very artistic. Traditionally,
for a new father.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know
And a
exactly
new
what I'm going to
father.
do. I'm going to go home and eat cold noodles while rocking my newborn. But yeah, no, I think I had an innate ability for communicating. I've always been able to string a couple of words together. But at my core, goddamn guys, we're diving deep. At my core, I'm fundamentally really curious and really excited about stuff. And I just want to tell other people, this is so cool. I want you to know about this. I want everyone to know about this. And so any writing that I've ever done comes from that place. Right. Here's the thing I learned. I want you to know it too.
It's like the heart of an entertainer in a way. You want to connect. You want people to feel the joy that you feel, that it's tangible. You're shaking, It's like when you used to get to go into Toys R Us when that was a thing. You're like, yes, I'm here. You attune the smells of it, the idea, the look of that, giraffe and everything. But was there a transformative moment for you at all professionally that led you, do you think, to Commonplace? Do you think, was there one kind of lightning bolt that got you to this moment?
Yeah. So shortly after, let me take a step back. New York for a little while. Again, great city to visit, very chaotic to live in. It turns out you don't have to do everything all the time. Nobody ever told,
Yeah.
I thought something's happened 24/7. I got to be there. And thank God there are illicit substances that, at least for a short amount of time, allow you to try and go and do all those things.
Is that, and not to, propel any type of preconceived notion, but you were used to, I'm sure, a pretty 24/7 lifestyle. So adjusting back to what
only
you would call
years later did
civilian
it dawn on
life.
me why I moved to the Bronx with
And I
no
didn't-
Spanish
not
skills
to ask
and a
a
chaotic
really obvious
environment.
question, but
Yeah.
New York, it's big.
It's
Were
noisy.
you drawn to that? Was the idea of the Midwest, almost repellent to you subconsciously?
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I think the chaos was attractive. I've always, again, for reasons that any psychoanalyst could quickly figure out, I've always been drawn to that type of chaos. I think there's a lot of beauty in it. There's a lot of potential in it.
Yeah.
I like the noise.
And you could say that a lot of that is transferable into the professional world, the world of nonprofit, the world of groups and folks who have to work hard and where community and camaraderie is essential. Would you say community and camaraderie is essential in the spaces that you're in? Or, can you get by on the merits of other things? Can other, competitors, try to get by on the merits of other things?
I think people try that all the time, and it works for a little while. But if your competitive advantage is flash and is the niceness of the furniture, well, that's really easy for other people to outcompete you on. Just need to have a little bit more money to build something that's just a little bit nicer. And it turns out all nice spaces degrade over time.
Right.
So what do you have when patina's gone?
Well, you have to do something that is almost in a way unenviable. And you have to do something that other businesses in a way have to do, is you have to cater to the tastes of so many, like a hotel. You try to be as broad as you can. The ones that are super niche are super niche. So what is your philosophy there? This is a unique area you're drawing from, and we'll get to that in a second. But what is your aesthetic idea just off the bat, thinking about the website, thinking about how you present?
So we recently had a breakfast for all of our members. We had everybody in a room that was way too small.
Good way to make it look filled. It's good though.
Yeah, it is true. I had to run around and grab more tables and chairs. We made everybody waffles. We thought about having it catered, but we realized we've really got a home cooking crowd. And so we had a great facilitator who led those of our members who were able to be present. Not everybody could be there. But she led the group in conversations about what they expect to see out of a shared workspace. What sort of values do they want to see made manifest? How do they want to see conflicts resolved? What do they want to see those norms and those expectations be? And one of the really clear things that came out of that session, because not everything was clear, to your point there, people had differing opinions on some different fundamental things. But what was really clear is that our members want and expect to see a co-working space that exists for more than just the benefit and perpetuation of that space. They want a space that serves the broader community. And what that looks like can and will mean a number of different things.
Sure. But you also have to cater and do cater to solo workers, folks who may have a working style that is a little more solitary. So how do you consider?
Yeah,
and there
this
are
is a
plenty
big
of
one.
Artistic people, people who you would think would be part of the collective. So what's the strategy there? What are the ideas?
Continuing to talk about it. I know having a dialogue is a little cliche, but cohabitation is a motherfucker.
Yeah.
And it requires constant communication and dialogue, because what I want to see as an extrovert that runs a co-working space isn't necessarily what all of the members want to see. So one of the things that we've always talked a lot about, and most recently at this breakfast continue to talk about, is how do we, within our space, create norms around collective work and individual work? How do we make it okay for people to close their door, even though it's a very, sort of boisterous, friendly atmosphere, to close their door and say, I'm on a deadline, man. I got to get this grant in. I have to, land this client. And there's no easy answer, but continuing to talk through it and work through it. It's not just important for our space. It's important for any collaborative environment, whether that's within one organization or it's, a multiple organization space.
Well, thinking about the interpersonals and talking to you, it sounds pretty joyous, but there probably have to be moments where people are missing. They're not collaborating correctly or in the way that everybody would like. So is that something that is in your purview and things that you have to deal with in any way, or does it come up?
Yeah, I have to be real careful when answering, a question that's been addressed multiple times in our emails and our communications. What do you mean you don't know that? We've made that so clear to you.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to take a step back and realize that, again, our members are not homogenous. Different people need different things, and they need different things at different times. And while Commonplace is one of the most important things in my life, aside from family and some other really important projects in the community, it's not the number one priority for everybody who's showing up. We hope that it's more than just a transactional relationship of, they pay us X amount of dollars, we give them X amount of square feet. We hope it goes beyond that. But we are providing a service for people.
You are the first executive director for Commonplace, is that correct? Officially?
Officially, sure. But
all right.
Commonplace
well,
was...
You're very modest. I mean, can I just say it and you can just nod, or we can just say that you acquiesced with the head motion. So can you talk a little bit about the structure of the staffing and who you have on staff or volunteers? And after having said that, is it optimal right now?
Yeah. So I want to first start by talking about the origins of the organization. And earlier we talked about the first physical space that we inhabited, but Commonplace was very much the creation of Kate Redman, a very good friend and mentor, and a number of other community members that all came together to design the first space. There were exhaustive conversations with people in the community about what they would want to see out of a collaborative workspace. Many of those folks came from the nonprofit world, but it certainly wasn't exclusively nonprofit people.
Yeah.
And so Kate is still on the board of Commonplace. She's still very much involved in providing that mentorship and some of those values, holding space for those values and some of those ethos, especially when I'm, looking at an annual budget and having to make tough decisions. She's a fantastic moral compass for the organization.
Well, you talked about, the desire for this. And so you obviously had that engagement with Traverse City and the area and the public. Traverse City seems like a shoo-in for this kind of thing, but was it always a guarantee, or was there ever any moment of doubt? Like, is there enough here for this?
Every goddamn day.
Really?
Yeah. It's one thing for a lot of people to stand up and say they want something. It's another to continue to...
Right.
I think this is a challenge that every co-working operator has. All their members say, we want more events. We want more opportunities to be together. And then on that Wednesday night, come on, guys. Come on.
Every excuse in the book comes out. Yeah.
Right.
And it's got something.
And they're all legitimate reasons, because people's time is precious and there are a lot of demands on people's time. So earlier when I talked about all the work that goes into building a culture that is really attractive to people, that's where so much of that time goes into. It's also, if people aren't always showing up in the ways that we hope they would, where are we failing them? Where are we not providing sufficient value? At the end of the day, it's any organization's fault, be they nonprofit or for-profit. Not their fault, but ultimate responsibility lands with them.
Right.
Did you start producing a product no one really wants because you fell in love with it? Are you offering a service that no one really wants because you didn't do the hard work of having those initial and ongoing conversations with the people that you want to serve?
Right.
It's also really hard when you hear feedback that you don't want to hear.
Yeah. And what if you're really passionate, and you believe it, and to the point of insanity, everybody else is wrong, and then it's better maybe to try and fail, or to have the research and do the right thing and put that energy in a trajectory that's going to yield a positive result, if you can.
Who's the work for, ultimately?
Right.
Is it for one individual or a small group of individuals, or is it in service of something bigger and broader?
Yeah.
And if it really is in service of something bigger and broader, you have to continually do the work to make sure.
And it'll find its way in the right ways. Well, you talked about engagement, I think, is what you were saying. And ultimately, if somebody's not engaged, that's the organization's responsibility. So for you, what do you see as the best first step in trying to get somebody re-engaged?
It's absolutely interpersonal. And it's coffee, man. We have so many great local coffee shops. One of the best parts of my job, if I could only do one thing in my role, it would just be to have coffee constantly with all of our members. I learn so much about them and so much about what they're doing and what we can help provide them with, how we can help support them again, beyond just providing that physical space. Oh, you're working on X, Y, and Z? Oh my God, I got to connect you to this person and this person. Or you're struggling with this professionally, personally, to the degree that it's helpful. Yeah, I'm there to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, you're clearly very engaged, and it must take a lot of time to be this engaged. So how many employees do you have? Do you have a group of people who reports to you, and where are your responsibilities there?
Yeah, I have at this point one part-time staffer who is our community manager. She does a fantastic job. She's stepped into the role within the past 6 months, but you would never know that she hasn't been there for years. We're also starting to contract out more services, communications, things like that. Things that, yeah, I could do it. My growing team could do it, but there are some really sharp people out there. And I would rather go earn and raise the money to pay an expert to do it than continue to.
And that's an interesting position to have to be in as a leader of an organization. Going, well, if I want this, most others have to put a case together for it, make sure there's adequate funds in the budget for that. And there you go. But you just said, you have to find out how to get that money somehow in the best way possible, in the quickest way possible, and hopefully it works out.
Yeah, something interesting you said, the quickest way possible. All small businesses have this. There's a sense of urgency. The relationships that sustain an organization long term are not formed quickly. And one of the biggest challenges for a lot of nonprofits or for for-profits that are seeking meaningful long-term investment is fighting that urge to rush, to ask for the upfront cash, rather than really building that deep and impactful relationship that can sustain important work long-term, which is easy to say, super hard, looking at a scary balance sheet at the end of the month.
Wow.
At the end of the year.
Yeah. I mean, that's almost its own economic as it relates to this sort of work podcast. I mean, there's so many different ways that you could be, you're beholden to a board at the end of the day, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what I think
to a board, yeah, but more importantly, and I think our board, and I'm happy to talk about the awesome folks that we have on the board, but ultimately we are certainly beholden to our members. The board is there, and they would all say this, they're there to support the work that the staff do to bring value to the members. Right. So I don't worry. I don't lose sleep about what my board members are going to say. I do lose sleep about what our members are going to say.
Well, that is phenomenal. And we're going to get to this, but what is just a key for you in successfully engaging a board? And how are you being able to say what you just said? Because it's contrary to a lot of what we hear on this show, to a lot of what, you may hear, like, oh, the board, it's really difficult. And I get the passion about your members, your guests, who really, and hopefully the board knows that pays the bills. But just do you have a key to getting to the place that you're in? Because you look really zen when you said it.
Yeah. I do have to remind our board sometimes what pays the bills.
So there's a little work yet still.
Oh my God, everyone does, but all important relationships require a lot of maintenance and trust and support. Our organization, we actually just had our last meeting for the year. A few of our longstanding board members who really stood by the organization during the pandemic have stepped off, and we have some more folks coming on. One of the things I'm really looking forward to in January and February is that we're going to go into strategic planning for the first time in quite a few years. We now have 2 spaces. Our role and the value that we provide our community is expanding, and it's really time to sit down and think about what the long-term future of the organization looks like.
Right.
So our strategic planning is going to take place over the course of a couple of days. We're going to go spend some time right on Little Traverse in some cabins. We've got some great facilitators coming in to help with the process. We're going to hash stuff out all day. And then at night, we're going to cook together. We're going to have some beers around a campfire, wake up in the morning, probably do a cold plunge in Little Traverse, which is terrible because it's only like knee deeps for 5 miles out. And then we're going to get back at it. That's the kind of relationship that I want to have with a board.
Yeah.
They are mentors and advisors, and they are friends. And that's not the relationship that everyone is lucky enough to have with their board. Yeah. And when I say friends, I don't mean supportive at all costs. These are very critical friends.
And real friends, should be critical when they need to be critical. So it's still a great metaphor. Well, from the website, if I may get corny, the guiding principles: positive belief, kindness, generosity, joy, and appreciation. Where did that come from, and why are those important to what you do? Because it could be seen as, why would you have that? You have this, space where you just probably have to police people to make sure they're not stealing pens from one another. Why was it important to have guiding principles? Why was it important to have a culture at all?
I don't think any space, even more broadly, any organization can be successful without a really good culture. I think a lot of organizations are comfortable picking a set of core values off of a sheet because some consultant told them they're supposed to do that. And that's it. They're on the website, and that's really the only place that they show up. And it really is important for us to continually live those values and to stress test those values. And one thing that we've not done a good enough job over the past couple of years is check in with our members and say, are we living up to some of these espoused values? And that's something we're starting to do more, and we'll get really
Are they aware
ruthless.
of the values? Are they, I envision, again, you seem to have brought them into your heart, your business heart, as employees almost. Mm-hmm. So, employees sometimes carry a little card of their company's values. How is it clear to the members, what you stand for, and how do you use that as a tool to gain, more members?
Yeah, having a card to hand out with their values on it sounds terrible.
I've been there. Worked at places that did that.
Here's how you know what we stand for.
Asked,
we put it on a card.
Somebody would come up, your general manager would be like, what's core value 5? And if you didn't recite it well, this may sound reminiscent of the military, and it at times felt that way.
How many pieces of flair do you have on your vest?
Exactly, the flair principle.
Oh man, I've thought a lot about this, and I've actually thought about not posting our values or any kind of values, because I
like where this is going.
This is rambly and unvetted.
I love this.
But I feel like as soon as same thing with a mission statement, same thing as a vision, I think these are really powerful tools to motivate a team internally. But I also feel like as soon as you put that shit on your website, then you can just lean on it. You can lean on the rhetoric. I feel the same thing about accessibility and inclusivity statements. And again, I understand the intention and the value that those can bring. But if you have to say we're open and welcoming of all people, you kind of miss the point. Everyone in your community should know that. They should know that by the work that you do. They should know that by how you show up and how other people show up within your space, within your organization.
It's interesting because some people on the other side of it see it printed and think, no, that's bullshit. Anybody can print that on their website. So you're always trying to defend your principles in a way, although that's not what it's meant for. It's meant, and the way you articulate it was wonderful, in that it's a feeling, but you're trying to convey it to, again, all these different people who have different needs for their spaces, or it may be this one person who has their own need. Mm-hmm. So again, you still are trying to convey that. And do you think you're successful on a daily basis, or how are you checking your success in that regard?
Yeah, we're not above having sayings and platitudes posted on our walls, which is a staple of all co-working spaces everywhere. We've got a number of quotes from both Stephen Johnson, particularly from his work, Where Good Ideas Come From, and then a lot of quotes from Adrienne Marie Brown and her work, Emergent Strategies. And we've got at least one member who, after walking through the space and chatting with me, said, part of the reason I'm here is because I walked in and saw that Adrienne Marie Brown quote and thought, oh yeah, okay, this space is for me. So there is a value to some of that stuff. So I don't mean to discount that, but we don't have the same fucking Steve Jobs quotes that, a lot of co-working spaces have.
I was drawn to her quote. It talks about potential, and it's phenomenal. And, it's not super obvious either. It's not just thrown at your face when you get onto the website. But again, as an organization doing what you do, you have to think about marketing. You have to think about all this stuff. So,
I have a great communication consultant who's pushing me on a lot of that right now.
but again, you very clearly want something real and tangible. But again, there's a business that you have to balance and a balance sheet that you just talked about. So what's the hardest part about that duality for you? What's the hardest part about those two things? Or is there?
Oh, no, it's embracing abundance and not falling prey to a scarcity mindset. We live in an incredibly rich community, and there's enough. There's absolutely enough. We could easily fill 5 more co-working spaces. So when I look on LinkedIn and see something that's happening somewhere else, then I start to feel the elbows coming out. God damn it, why is it happening there and not here?
Yeah.
And we're all subject to that, but that's absolutely the wrong mentality.
That's a lot of drive. Leaders.
And it's a practice, man. I'm not particularly good at it, but it's being.
Would you call
cognizant
yourself kind of fanatical about the success of what you're doing?
Yeah, in a certain way, because there are definitely different kinds of success, and some metrics for a successful organization, for a successful co-working space, achieving those metrics require sacrificing other things. To meet some of those metrics for success, they require a finite mindset. And it's so easy to snap into a finite mindset.
Right.
And having an infinite mindset, and again, thinking about acknowledging abundance rather than scarcity is just, it is a constant practice, because we're not hardwired for it.
Right.
Even if it is a universal truth that there's enough.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful concept to articulate occasionally. It's not always the land of plenty in everybody's eyes. But looking back internally to all the things that you've accomplished, what are you proudest up to at this point, and why is it making Lewis Black laugh?
Yeah, that was a big one. I definitely accosted him out behind the theater here in town. He was not.
You're smooth.
He was not happy to talk to. He just wanted to get the hell out of town. Yeah, my joke to Lewis Black was, Mr. Black, I'm a huge fan. I've now seen you in 2 third world countries. I saw you in Baghdad on a USO tour, and I saw you in Joliet, Illinois.
Oh, nice.
Where I was born and raised. And so that at least got a chuckle out of him.
Well, I was born in lesser mean streets born in Chicago, but raised in the northwest suburbs of Barrington. So I'm sorry. I didn't get the coolness.
But now you're here.
Yeah, we're in a really, really cool place. But do you think about that? What are you professionally most proud of, or personally most proud of? Does that hold place for you?
As we record this, we're sliding into the end of the year, and this is a traditional time for reflecting on things like that. And it is something that I don't do a good enough job reflecting on. Like a lot of folks, I tend to spend more time thinking about how that could have been done better, or, man, if I just made different choices, or if I'd, if. And that's good. Self-reflection, internalizing is really important for growth. But I don't hold enough space for what's been done well, what I'm proud of. We were chatting before the mics heated up that I've got a 1.5-week-old kid.
Yes, you do.
And, it's the obligatory answer to say that you're super proud of your family. But I really am. It's, there's 8 billion of us. So in some ways it's not that big of a deal, but my wife and I, it's, one of the most important things we've ever teamed up on. So, yeah.
Again, you're taking humility to the nth degree there, but that's okay.
Oh, you should see me around the kid, though. She is the smartest, best, most capable person. She's already the president.
Well, so that's obviously something that motivates you, and you see that, and maybe it gives perspective. Does that give a different perspective? Does this new fatherhood give a different perspective on your work in any way?
One of the things that I most love about my daughter is the future potential. At this point, I've been calling her our little lobster monkey, because she is red and wrinkled, and she's, just a screamy little blob. But I get so incredibly excited thinking about who she's going to become and the work that I and others are doing to continue to push our community forward. I'm really excited to think about the town that she's going to grow up in, and she's going to face a whole new set of challenges. But she will be equipped for those challenges, not just because of how my wife and I raise her, but because of the group of people that we're going to raise her with and around.
Yeah.
She's going to see us participating in a community that we weren't born and raised in, but are very much a part of and have worked really hard to be a part of.
Yeah. And that's a lovely message. You know, when you think about how many people from different backgrounds are in our community, you may look from the outside and think, well, we're so homogenous and everybody from Michigan, everybody's just from Michigan. And that seems to be this ubiquitous term. I'm finding more and more lately in comedy for Midwestern. People are saying Michigan. It used to be like Chicago or Illinois. We just talked about that, but that's the synonymous term with Midwesterner, which is okay. But thinking about your upbringing and professionally, did you receive advice along the way about your future from anybody that seemed insane that turned out to be true and surprised you?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I will have the perfect answer for that at 2 a.m.
It's
tonight.
one of those 2 a.m. questions, is it?
Yeah.
I've heard that before. It's not one I ask all the time, but what I'm trying to get at is I think people are interested in knowing what makes successful leaders and people who are doing good successful, because you have this balance. You have to balance a business. You have to balance, you know, it's easy to talk about feeling good and creating togetherness when you're able to do it. But I also like people from your background who has this uniqueness. I have to feel along the way somebody said something to you when you weren't listening to authority and you were like reflected on it maybe at 2 a.m. and went, man, I put that into play at work today from that person.
I think it's less what people have said and more about what they've done. So we, especially in the past couple of years, you know, we really idolize, let's say, Navy SEALs, for example. You know, there were some movies that came out there, they're real popular. Everybody loves special forces. The reason they're so incredibly competent and capable is not because they're made up of a bunch of Jean-Claude Van Dammes. It's because they do the little things over and over and over again. And they do it with such discipline and rapidity, even when they're tired, even when they don't want to, even when it's so easy to make excuses about why you shouldn't do another 2 hours of very boring up-down drills. And I find that incredibly inspiring. I also think about Zingerman's, started off as a deli out of Ann Arbor, and they're now a multi-million dollar business. They're known for their customer service and for their really incredible food.
Yeah.
And one of their founders, Ari, one of his 12 laws of business is do the things that other people know they should do, but don't. And there's no real secret sauce, I think, to leadership or to performance or other things. It's real easy and frankly lazy to take a look at some of those outliers like Steve Jobs. Yep, those people totally exist, but really what's much more common in incredible leaders, and not just leaders, but people that get shit done, is they show up and they know what they're supposed to do and they just do it. They don't make the excuses. They do the reps. They have those uncomfortable conversations face to face. Wouldn't it be easier to just send an email or let their staff worry about it? So I'm rambling a little bit, but I think it's actions over inspiring words that have most impacted me.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, the act of rambling precludes not having a point, veering off. That was very cogent, and it had a great point.
Oh, I'm glad it sounded that way to one of us.
Well, no. I mean, it resonated with me because I'm feeling that, you know, your time in the military, you know, all these other experiences that you've had have culminated in a really great fit for what your members are looking for in all of this, but what is the most fun you get to have in the day? And I don't mean, like fun in a silly way, like bringing cupcakes to the team, but what's something that literally gives your heart joy about your business day?
It is collaboration. I know that about myself. I cannot work in a vacuum. I can't remember if we talked about it earlier or not. I worked in print media for some years, and being in that raucous, chaotic bullpen, bouncing ideas back and forth, being challenged by editors and being made sharper and better by editors through a collaborative, sometimes violently collaborative process. That's what I love. I love working with other people and being challenged by other people and pushing back, and that there's just that interplay that I find so it's not even sufficient to call it fun, because I can't exist without it. I need that collaborative environment.
Right. So you don't have to lean on the one thing you're looking forward to that day. It's a lot of things you look forward to. And we did skip over a little bit the notion of your time in media. And
I just
again,
kept talking about New York. I was only there for 6 months. I don't know why I kept going
but
back to that.
It's still impressive because, you needed that to acclimate and get you here, that's part of your journey. But when you think about your leadership style, what do you think your defining characteristic is as a leader, and what do you think most leaders could improve upon?
Well, I'll start with the second part, because I know what I can improve on. And this is so much has been written about this. This is a classic leadership trap. But I'm working to have more trust and to micromanage less. I think a lot of leaders who micromanage will acknowledge that they do it, but the follow-up question is, great, what are you doing about that? And people make lots of excuses, but at the end of the day, it is fundamentally about trust and doing some important self-work to figure out why you don't have that trust naturally, particularly if you have a great team, which so many leaders do. If you don't have a great team, fire them and go get a great team, because they're certainly out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that trust, and I know I'm a broken record, but embracing that abundance mindset, not falling prey to scarcity, because that crops up so many ways philosophically, but also very operationally.
Right. And this keeps you a mycelium for mission-driven business. This is attributed to you. Is that not something you recall saying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, a root structure. And I'm very visual, so it created something. Do you have, is that something that you've woven into your personal philosophy?
Mushrooms are insane. When I think about what I want to be when I grow, oh my God. When I think about what I want to be when I grow up is a mushroom. They're incredible organisms.
Did you play a lot of Super Mario, or do you? Because that's a central plot
a lot
of it,
mushrooms.
Is the mushroom fungus,
Yeah.
So to your point, right?
Yeah. And that's a very cartoonish, infantilized version of, what an incredible, the role that they play within any ecosystem. And an ecosystem right now is a very popular term. And I would assume that 95% of people that love to use the word ecosystem don't understand ecology and couldn't tell you much about an actual ecosystem. During the pandemic, like a lot of people, took up gardening, and I've learned so much and grown so much in a professional sense from learning about soil composition, learning about mycology, because there are just so many analogies to community building, to organizational development. And when a fungus, when a mycelia, it remediates a toxin from a soil, it doesn't just pull that bad stuff out. It actually transmutes that toxin into viable nutrients. And that's just an incredible metaphor for community building. You don't just get to pull the bad stuff out. That bad stuff isn't even bad. It has a purpose. It has a function within the ecosystem. And so what can you do to transmute it from something that's causing pain to something that's productive, something that can be taken up, by the neighboring root system.
Yeah.
Something that the whole community can benefit from.
Yeah. You just made me think about people's misconception of sustainability as well. And that when you're just said that, like, every invasive comes from somewhere. It has its indigenous roots somewhere and has its purpose. But, when I catch a neighbor planting bamboo, because it's like it grows really easy and,
It's
and you can
aesthetically
do a lot of
pleasing.
stuff with a lot of it. And it's like, yeah, but if you plant bamboo right now, it will grow, it will take over, and I could plant it here. And if you live 3 blocks from me, the root system will have bamboo growing in your yard, and we could destroy the neighborhood. So, yeah, a good, quick growing plant, but think about what you're doing. General Mills sending flowering seeds in their boxes of Honey Nut Cheerios, and then quickly realizing they were sending like certain seeds to
Right.
areas that those should not be planted there because they will take over.
Holy cow.
It comes from a fundamental misunderstanding and misattribution of how much impact any individual can have. And again, this is nothing new, but those folks that are planting the bamboo, those folks that are burning their garbage, well, it's just, we got a whole planet. It's not that big of a deal. I'm not causing that much of an impact. I think it's really scary for people to think about the incredible negative or frankly positive impacts that they can be having. Because once people fully understand what impacts they're capable of, then they're sort of on the hook for making those things happen or not making them happen. Yeah. And that's scary for a lot of folks.
Well, you're attributed as saying on your LinkedIn profile, your raison d'etre is to support those businesses and industries which are awakening to their incalculable potential for social good. And that really stood out to me because, again, you seem like your missions and everything that drives you is very altruistic. You're always giving to others. And so I want to know, one, are you sated by your day-to-day for this, or do you seek other things and other ways to improve? And then how do you spend time kind of keeping yourself worked on and motivating yourself? Because a lot of time has to be spent doing what you're doing.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, I am kept motivated by being around other people that I really respect and want to emulate. There are so many examples in this community specifically, but in other parts of Michigan, all over the country, all over the world that I stay in contact with. And I'm fueled by the good work that they're doing. And so I do idolize some of these people and always think, oh man, how can I get to that next level of impact? One of the things I've been thinking about more lately is that I do think it seems great to say that it's all altruistic, but really impact is just scorekeeping by another metric. And so in the same way that you can never be satisfied with making enough money, it's also possible that you can never be satisfied with the level of impact that you're having.
Sure.
So one of the things that I think I'm going to have to work on in the next couple of years is being satiated, being sated by a certain amount of efficacy and impact.
Is that trending towards obsession? Is that a word that's volleyed about either internally for you, or?
I certainly use much kinder wording when it's in my head, but yeah, it does border on obsession. And the problem with that is that I will always fall short of that idealistic picture, which means, I'll never be happy, which paradoxically means I will never be as effective as I want to be. Right. You can't be miserable and be effective, or at least not for very long. And saying it out loud, it sounds just crazy fucking grandiose. So there is some egotism behind all of it. Sure. And that probably warrants further self-discovery.
But there's common themes. On this show, we have guests who are all very for others by nature of what they do. And I'm fascinated by the things that drive them. And there is a certain level of dedication and giving to others. So often I'm always interested in what you afford yourself as well, what you afford those around you, what time that you have to afford anything to yourself with a brand new baby girl at home and all those new responsibilities. But I have one final question for you, and hopefully it's not too deep and not too heavy. And you sometimes save things for the end for reasons, but what is your favorite Werner Herzog film? And is McClure's the best pickle juice?
If he did a documentary about pickles, I think that would be
the
fantastic.
most interesting thing.
It'd be
ever.
a very dark documentary about the history of pickles, staring into the abyss of the empty jar. Yeah, I love Werner Herzog.
I'm sorry, I butchered his name. I love him as well.
I was going to ask you is this why you were so excited about this interview?
No. I had to have questions for our guest, and I wanted to end with his favorite Werner Herzog film or performance, and the question is McClure's the best pickle juice?
Yeah. So his best documentary is, oh my God, now I'm blanking on the name, but it's about McMurdo Base in Antarctica. It's everything you'd expect out of a Herzog film. It's, sweeping landscapes and, again, his morose Germanic narration.
Encounters at the End of the World.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
He also has a cameo on Parks and Rec, which is phenomenal because it's such a funny, upbeat, lighthearted show. And then Werner Herzog inexplicably is just in
throw him in. He's in the world of Star Wars canon now. He's interesting. And McClure's, is that the best pickle juice?
There are a lot of pickles out there. There are so many pickles I haven't even tried yet. I'm excited about the potential of all the amazing
so you're not
fermented
ready to
foods
commit.
that are out there in the world.
Okay.
No.
I wouldn't want to commit to it either.
I just need like another 150 years to figure out definitively what is the best.
Well, ironically, pickling is a way to...
I was going to say, what was Seth Rogen in?
American Pickles.
Yeah.
Actually, pretty good film. That's not what this is about.
Not based on hard science, but...
Right. Yeah. Loose.
What? I thought it was...
Well, where can listeners support, get information about Commonplace? Support first, get information. What can anybody do? Volunteer, donations, anything like that?
Yeah, I think at this point, going through our website, commonplacework.org, is going to be the best way to learn about certainly what we have available through our physical space. We're always looking for folks that want to rent offices, folks that want dedicated desks, folks that just need a place to work from, maybe a few days or even a few hours a week. And growing that family of people that use our space is really a way to enrich certainly our immediate community and then more broadly our full community. So I think that's one way to go about it. My email, nick@commonplacework.org. My loving wife is going to murder me, but my cell phone is 719-367-9168. Yeah, we've got a newborn, so we're not sleeping anyway. Give me a call. We'll chat.
It's that kind of dedication, and I'm sorry I called it obsession, but it's...
two sides of the same coin,
It's dedication honed in the right way, and maybe more fun to look at from the outside and live with. Well, Nick, thank you so much for your pursuits, and to all of those who pursue along with you, working to make our communities better and more fulfilling places to live, work, and connect. And I think it's really, really amazing what you're doing. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks, man. This was fun.
And to all of our listeners, thank you all for listening, and thank you for pursuing the positive.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us again on The Pursuit of Podcast here in 2023. We want to say Kachimigwech, thank you to Nick Beadleston for joining us from Commonplace, sharing his story and his efforts to bring community together in one workspace. For more information and to learn about the community, go to commonplacework.org. And as always, for all things audio, video, podcasting, check us out at newleonard.com.